All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG podcast. My name is Hat.
And I'm Eric.
And today we are going to be bringing up the results from last week's Final Fantasy soundtrack poll that we had. We took down your guys' votes to see which one was the best or highly rated Final Fantasy soundtrack. And we're going to go over those results, and then we're also going to talk about our top 3 Final Fantasy soundtracks. And that was a topic brought up by Leon last week, so thank you, Leon. But we're going to talk about it more this week. So we're going to be doing that. And then there was a recent interview with Nomura about Kingdom Hearts. He talked a little bit about where the development is, so we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about Sea of Thieves, the recent MMORPG that's been released on both Xbox and PC. It's been mostly mixed reviews, and it's been in the press a lot lately, so we're going to be talking about that. And then also, one of our listeners, John Stein, he's asked us to talk about the Diablo series, so we're going to talk a little bit about that as far as we can. And also, co-founder of Blizzard and the creator of the Diablo series, David Brevik, he's making a game by himself. It's called Lurks Below. And John Stein, he was really wanting me to bring that up as well. So I checked it out a little bit, and it looks pretty cool. And then we have another comment from Leon. He's kind of laughing about his age and kind of giving his gaming experience. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But other than that, we're going to start this week off with what have you been playing? So Eric, what have you been playing?
Well, I actually got something different to talk about. I have just about beaten Radiant Historia, getting myself ready for Alliance Alive next Tuesday. People have been telling me it's great if you're a major JRPG fan. So I'll definitely be picking that up on Tuesday. What I did pick up yesterday, though, was No Kuni 2. And I've played about 2 hours of it so far. So I can't talk too much about it. I got the higgledies. That's about as far as I've really gotten right now. I haven't been able to get to the kingdom building section or the skirmish sections yet. But I have been able to play out a little bit of how the action combat works, because they actually changed the combat system in this game. The first Ni no Kuni was more of like a turn-based game that you use pets like similar to Pokemon to do your battles for you. And
yeah,
this game,
I saw that. A lot of references to Pokemon and Digimon, and it was kind of like a big news that this game has actually changed its core mechanic, or one of them anyways. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's they did really completely change it. I mean, like, the pets are not present in this game. There is a form of pet control with the higgledy, but they're more of a support function than a direct function. So they're not always necessary in every battle to use, or more useful in boss fights. So you don't use them too much. It's still mostly reliant upon you, but you do have 3 characters you can transition from on the flick of a button, and you also have 3 weapons you switch out between the 3. And how it works is when you use a weapon more and more, you get it up to 100%. And then you unleash a devastating, powerful attack. And when you're done with that, it goes back down to 0 when you use it. And the trick to it is you keep swapping between 3 weapons, because the other weapons start gaining percentages while you're using another one. So you want to switch to a different weapon and get that to 100% and start chaining combos and like that. So it is a neat little system. I haven't been able to get the full potential of it yet, but it is pretty interesting so far. The battles do feel pretty smooth. I don't really care for the fact that you have to press, I believe it was L1 and X at the same time to do a dodge roll. I wish that was just a simple button function.
Yeah.
Because pressing at the same time could be really harmful to you. But you can press L1 to guard. But I'm kind of more of an evasion type person than a guard type person. So
this sounds like, from what I've seen, this is sounding pretty much like the half praise, half criticism I've seen is that people are a little confused who the target audience is, because like the you look at the game, it looks like it's kind of for kids, right? But then they start playing the battle system and like all the mechanics, and it's like fairly complicated. So it's kind of like, is this really would a kid really figure this out? Because it's it's pretty well done in the form that, like, okay, as an adult, if you like complicated systems, it seems like it's an interesting mechanic to work through. Do you think like young kids would actually have a problem with this, or do you think that is the target audience? Maybe I'm completely off base here.
I think if you're younger, you may be able to figure it out.
Okay.
It's I would say it's a maybe like a kid like 8 or years older would be able to get a grasp on it, no problem.
Oh, okay. So it can't be that bad then.
Yeah, I mean, like concept wise, I don't know how much harder the fights get later,
Sure.
but there is some management with the kingdom customization and the skirmish, so that may be the part that's not very child friendly. But I've yet to reach it to make that conclusion. Story wise, the most important thing. This is not Studio Ghibli working on it this time. They provided their art assets and they provided their music work for it, but Studio Ghibli themselves did not write the story, and I'm kind of seeing it already. It doesn't really, it didn't really capture me the first few minutes that the first game did, because you definitely felt that Ghibli magic there. It's not so much present at the beginning of the game.
Mm-hmm.
It starts out like I'm not kidding when I say this. The President of the United States gets transported to this world and meets with a half lion, half boy, who's your main lead, the half lion, the half boy.
Yeah.
And he is destined to become king, but he's getting usurped by a rebellion of mice against him. I'm interested in the premise. The execution felt really rushed and a little off-putting.
Yeah,
but
I don't blame it. That's crazy. I don't know. I don't even know how to respond about that. That's just, I mean, that's very imaginative and very crazy, but it just boggles my mind that like there was a board meeting and like somebody was like laying this plot line out on a whiteboard somewhere. And they're like, yeah, we're going to have the President of the United States. He's going to be teleported here, and then he's going to be confronted by a half lion. And then they're like, yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. But I mean, that is, if you're looking, it sounds like if you're looking for something that's really fresh and new, like there is something there for you.
Yeah. I mean, it does have an interesting premise. What I was kind of off-put by was that it all felt like rushed. I didn't, like, we kind of just got swung into the action of things, which in itself is not necessarily a bad thing.
Sure.
But just like, I feel like I just got everything thrown at once. Like, I needed a little bit of like sense and awe, but you do start out as Roland, the President of the United States, and he's like in his like 40. He looks like he's like in his 50s or something in the beginning of the game. But when he gets transported, he's like teleported and like he's half his age.
Oh, because, so he's like in his 20s.
We can't have older people.
Yeah, in JRPG land, everyone dies by the time they're like 27. So,
well, No Kuni 1, though, one of the party members was kind of an older fellow.
Really?
Yeah, I forgot his name, but you were like two kids, and like the other one was like more of an adult, more like our age. It looked like.
Okay.
Or a little older than us, maybe. But in this game, you're two children again, and Roland, who is the older one of the group. And if I had to say one more thing, the tutorials. I mean, tutorials aren't too bad. It's like pop-up screens, and they tell you what to do on it. But they popped up so many times during the thing, like I felt like I wasn't able to enjoy my game at all. I was like, "Let me play."
It's not Xenoblade too bad?
It's not Xenoblade too bad. At least not that I'm aware of yet.
Okay.
The tutorials have definitely slowed down since Chapter 2. The most tutorial I've gotten in Chapter 2 are about the Higgledies, the support monsters.
Cool. So thus far, with the minimal time that you've been able to put into it, can you give it a recommendation? Are you still on the fence? Like, I still got to play this a little bit more.
I'm still a little bit on the fence, but I am on more of the positive side than the negative side. So chances are I'll enjoy going through this game. But I'll let you guys know more as I play through it.
Very cool. Very cool.
All right. Hat, what have you been playing?
Okay, so I've been trying to plow more through Xenoblade Chronicles, trying to finish this 67-hour epic. And I think it is going to take me quite a while to beat it. I'm starting to see because, man, some of these dungeons are just so, well, I don't want to say dungeons, but like areas are just so big. Like it's almost like a backhanded compliment because I'm just like, on one hand, I'm like very impressed with the amount of effort they put into like just making these giant areas for you to run around in. But at the other end of the spectrum, I'm getting like fatigued with like, just let me get to the next place. I'm tired of running around. Like I just want to get to the next story sequence. But
I can agree with that. The dungeons there are some dungeons in the game that I felt overstayed their welcome, especially when you travel over to Mechanus.
That's what I've been doing.
Yeah, that transition to it is just so ridiculously long. I'm like, thank heavens there are like save points and everything on the way, but it was pretty rough. I don't blame you.
Yeah, so I've just been dealing with that, but I think I'm starting to get through it because I'm starting to see a little bit more story coming into it again, and that's really what I enjoy about this game. So I've been enjoying that, and I'm going to plow some more through that this week. It's good though so far. I do have some criticisms. I'm kind of writing those down. By and large, it's living up to its reputation. It's a pretty good game. So I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah. So we did a poll last week, and we asked people what their favorite soundtrack was, and the results we actually came with. The winner, of course, I'm not really surprised, is that Final Fantasy VII beat Final Fantasy IX, but only by one vote, though. So it does seem like a little close race there with the people who did vote to it, but FF7 did ultimately win, and I can see that. It's a pretty great soundtrack. I can listen to FF7s all day also. And 9 is my favorite, personally, but, I don't blame people for picking 7 either.
I was thinking about this a lot this week, like where would I rate mine? And I was kind of like, when I saw some of the poll results there, it was kind of like, it seemed like a lot of people were very, very split. Like it was like, okay, well, Final Fantasy IX was only one vote behind Final Fantasy VII. I think Final Fantasy VIII got like 2 votes behind that, and then a couple of other ones got like 1 vote. But like by and large, it's pretty hard to pick your favorite Final Fantasy soundtrack because they're all so good. And then on top of that, like the specific melodies that come with each game are so different, but they're so tied with, specific scenes from the games that it's like, it's hard to like separate, like, okay, do I really like this song or do I like what was occurring in the game with this song, So, but I'm not surprised that Final Fantasy VII won. I mean, it's a good soundtrack. For me personally, Final Fantasy IX is my favorite by and large. That like just hands down for me. But I was listening to some other soundtracks this week, trying to like make sure that like I could actually get a good placement and make sure that I've like really worked out where I want to put these. And the thing is, like whenever I listen to like Final Fantasy VII soundtrack, I'm always like, oh man, I forgot how good this is. And then it goes with the same thing with Final Fantasy VIII. Like whenever that starts playing, I'm just like, oh man, this is fantastic. And it goes the same for 6 and 10 and everything. But yeah, I'm not surprised that 7 won at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard for me to say. I always have to tell myself, like, which one moved me the most.
Sure.
And I would just say 9 did, because I think 9 was able to hit those notes just right. Like, especially with You're Not Alone. For the scene with Zidane at the end of Pandemonium, and he's, like, overcoming his conflict. I mean, that was just so emotionally powerful. Or, I believe it was called like Behind the Gates or something like that. At the very end, when Garnet runs down to the stairs, like all excited
Spoiler.
after the play. I'm trying my best to not spoil it. I'm just saying she gets excited and she walks down some stairs, and the music transition for that was just so ridiculously well done. Like it moves you.
But, honestly, that's one of the greatest ending sequences of RPG in general. Eventually we'll have to talk about more in depth with that game, but I the thing with Final Fantasy 9, and we're gonna rank these games here, so I guess we might as well just we'll start ranking them and see how they compare to that. But I think both of you and me are in agreement with Final Fantasy 9 soundtrack. I would assume being the first spot, but I think that like the way it's composed is just perfect for each scene. Like it really like you can just whenever you listen to a song from Final Fantasy 9, like the melodies just capture exactly what the character's emotions are feeling or what's supposed to be felt. I mean, try listening to Freya's theme and like do not like you're gonna know what she felt. Like she lost like everything. She's searching for someone she has that she's in love with, but she can't find him. Like I mean, like and there's just this you listen to it, it's just a sense of just like utter sorrow in it, and like it's just there's so many songs like that in the Final Fantasy 9 soundtrack that I think just capture perfectly what's supposed to be experienced by the player, you know?
Yeah. Final Fantasy 9 to me feels like it did the best in creating a sense of adventure through its soundtrack also, just simply by just the world map music or the Ice Caverns theme going through that or the Evil Forest. Like, it really feels like I'm going on some worldwide grand scale adventure. It just does that so almost perfectly. Like, it just captivates you into its world immediately, just with the music alone.
You know what it is? I was having this thought this week, and I like to compare it to like big movies, like let's say Lord of the Rings, right? Or even like Star Wars. The composers of those films, so you had Howard Shore, who's the composer for Lord of the Rings, the original trilogy, and then we had John Williams for Star Wars. Like, if you take those composers away, or the music that they wrote away from those movies, and you just put like a stock soundtrack in those movies, like the movies would not be anywhere near as good. Like they're like a third of how good those movies are because the music is so good and it just like captures exactly what's supposed to be experienced. And with Final Fantasy 9, like you said, a sense of adventure and just like feeling very fantasy driven, like classic fantasy, you know? So I like, let's say you traded like Final Fantasy 9 soundtrack out with like a generic, just, you know, factory produced RPG soundtrack. Yeah, I don't think the game would be anywhere near as good. I mean, the music in of itself, the music in of itself is like a character in the game. So for me, that's just why I have to put that at number one.
Yeah, can you just like imagine Back to the Future without John Williams' soundtrack? Just not to have that thing going while you're going while he's speeding 88 miles per hour down the road to get back to the present. Can you imagine that theme was not there and they put in some like generic 80s rock theme?
Yeah, like a Michael Jackson Thriller or something. Like
No, not even that. Like, you know those like generic B-rated movie 80s themes you hear all the time in those type of movies? It's like, that's what I'm thinking. Like, that would just damper the movie so much. I'm like, I mean, maybe we wouldn't know better, but if you just like compared the two, it kills the scene if you just replace it with like the most generic music.
Yeah, because what the music does is it allows the audience a sense of immersion, because the audience knows when they're watching the story, you know. And this is what you're doing in Final Fantasy 9 too. You're experiencing a story. The player knows that you're just sitting in your room, that you're watching your TV. This stuff isn't actually real, right? And it's not like a novel where you can just read verbatim, like every single thought the character's thinking, you know, so you just get immersed that way. When you're playing a game, and then same thing with a movie, like there's a certain amount of just like, you know, this isn't real. So like the music, it has to like instill emotions in you of like what's supposed to be experienced. So when you're supposed to have like a sense of wonderment, like you said in Back to the Future, when he's going up to like 88 miles per hour and then all of a sudden he's like time traveling, like it's like if you can't sell that moment, the whole movie's you know, that's a pivotal point to the whole movie. So yeah, dude, exactly.
Yeah, now there are, I will say that if there's like one of the mainline Final Fantasy games, I would say that I do have a little bit of problem with the soundtrack. I know it'd be typical here, but Final Fantasy 15, I believe, did not hit it in the way that previous Final Fantasies did. And I say that not as a jab towards Yoko Shimomura. I actually really enjoy her music. She did great in Kingdom Hearts. Like, she made really captivating music there. Radiant Historia, I've been playing lately. She did that, and I can definitely tell it's hers, and the music is so engaging in that game. There might not be many tracks in there, but the tracks she does have in there is just absolutely phenomenal for that game. But for Final Fantasy 15, they weren't really trying to do what they did in previous Final Fantasies, where they have like a nice track theme to go with the area you're in. Probably because it's an open world game, and they try to make the music like you're in an environmental type thing, if you know what I mean, like ambience or something like that. And you did get a few good tracks in 15. Like, I know everyone loves Wanderlust. I like the theme that's in Insomnia, or like that we heard in the trailer for Versus 13 that long ago. There are moments that soundtrack I do like in the game. The one problem I have is almost none of it's memorable. It's like I can't really think of many tracks in my head. Like, I remember the gas station theme you hear all the time.
Oh, God.
Or, like,
I hate that
the
one.
Altissia theme. But
or that
that's
freaking... That menu theme drives me nuts.
That's an interesting choice they did that. They haven't really done that since Final Fantasy 1, actually. When you go into a menu in 1, it transitions to a different theme. Then you go back to the original, the theme you were in.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, the NES one did that. And the PS1 version did it. Mm-hmm. But after that, they took it out.
Yeah.
For F1.
That's interesting. I never noticed that. And I've played the NES one a lot. I think usually it's because that game is so grind heavy, the Final Fantasy 1. And I'm playing it on an emulator. So what I do is I just turn the sound off, and I'll just put like a podcast on, because I'm like, okay, I got to grind for the next hour to get enough gold to get some equipment to move on. But with Final Fantasy 15, I think you're right that like there was quite a few like standout tracks, but I think where that game struggled soundtrack wise was it just felt like it lacked focus. I mean, usually if you see a Final Fantasy game, you can tell like Final Fantasy VIII's soundtrack is dramatically different than Final Fantasy IX, despite the fact that it's the same composer, because there's a very tight focus on like what this soundtrack is supposed to sound like. Even like Final Fantasy X, it's very like islandy, like it's got its own vibe going that's supposed to like let the player know like what they're supposed to be feeling, right? With Final Fantasy 15, it's just like all over the place. And like she was the main composer, but I know there was other people that stepped in, and like it sounded like they were using songs from the entire like 10-year history as the games changed. So yeah, they have that one from the Versus 13, which is just like this very like depressing piano piece with some like woman singing over it, and it's like, okay, we have that vibe, but then we also have like the mandolin, like generic Walmart bargain bin music that's playing in Lestalem, or the gas station with the guitar, or like when you're in a battle system, when you're in a battle, all of a sudden there's these like heavy synthesizers and like these like a drum kit, and you're like, what the hell? What is going on here? And then like all of a sudden, you'll start going back into like we're like very romantic sounding like Wonderlust, and like it's all like individually it can be very good, but I think for me it didn't evoke the emotions it needed to, because it was just all over the place. Like it didn't seem like it was coherent. And I don't think that was a fault of the composer. I think that was just like it wasn't accurately communicated to her, like what what this game was about, because they didn't even know till like almost towards the end. So
yeah, I blame that on direction also, because actually with Final Fantasy 14 1.0, they actually brought Nobuo Uematsu back to do the full soundtrack. He did everything. The one problem with it, though, was how Nobuo works is he gets involved with the other developers. He sees the areas, he sees the emotions that are going on during the scene, and he, in turn, makes the scenes sound and make or like evoke the feelings even stronger through that. So he has heavy involvement in that. And for 14, the development group for 1.0, before 2.0 development team jumped in, was that they wanted him to make just like themes, like make a desert theme, make a mysterious forest theme, make a seaside theme.
Yeah, and that's so vague. Like, what's a mysterious forest theme? It's like, well, what I think a mysterious forest theme is and what you think a mysterious forest theme is might be completely different, you know?
Yeah, and he got a general layout, and because of that, the music in 1.0, while not bad music, it's like one of the highest phrases of 1.0, but it just felt all over the place, like in a really...
It felt like
awkward way.
Contracted work, right? Like, just like, okay, we just need this one here, and then we need this one here. It didn't seem like it had a cohesive vibe to it.
Yeah, it did definitely feel like contract work. Now, when Masayoshi Soken stepped in for 2.0, he's the current composer right now. The music in 2.0 onwards is just phenomenal. I would argue to the point that 14 is probably my second favorite, because all the crazy cool stuff they do all the time. Like, almost every theme of the Primal in the game, Eidolons, people know them as, they have their own theme, and a lot of times they get lyrics in their theme. And on top of that, the lyrics are based on the lore of the Primal. Like, he actually gets together with the lore team to write the lyrics for the song he's composing. And, like, you can look up the lyrics online and everything, and, I mean, it's just a phenomenal read on top of that. And, like, he almost nails it every time a new patch comes out, and, well, like, new music.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so amazing to listen to. Like, even if you don't want to play the game, I highly suggest pulling up the soundtrack. The soundtrack is just so great on so many levels. Like, the area themes are really good.
I can attest to that, because I've played a pretty good amount of the first or not the first expansion, the base game,
vanilla game.
Yeah, of 14. And so I'm not like I haven't played all the expansions. I haven't beat the vanilla game, but you know, I listen to a fair amount of Final Fantasy soundtracks, and you know, on YouTube, and a lot of it will like start playing some tracks from other games, and a lot of times Final Fantasy 14's music has come up just, you know, in the playlist, and I'm not really looking at it, and it'll start playing, and I'm like, what is this? This sounds great. And I'll look at it, and it'll be Final Fantasy 14, you know? So it is really well executed for sure.
Yeah. The one thing, though, is that he explores a lot of music genres, especially for the Primal themes. For 14 itself, he stays pretty consistent. Like he had, like, a fantasy theme for, like, A Realm Reborn. Then he had, like, a dark fantasy theme for his music in Heavensward. Now he has, like, a Far Eastern theme for a lot of his tracks in Stormblood, because we are going Far East. Like, he knows how to make the environment feel right. Like, I felt like I was playing, like, a dark Game of Thrones, like, game with his music in Heavensward.
I kind of got that vibe from, a lot of people don't like it, but Final Fantasy 12 soundtrack, if it's kind of interesting if you research the way the music was composed, because the composer, Hashimoto, I believe, he originally did the Tactics soundtrack and the Vagrant Story soundtrack, so naturally he's going to do the Final Fantasy 12 soundtrack, because that game takes place in Ivalice and that whole world. So, and that was the first game without Nobuo. So the first direction that he got for writing the music for the game was they told him he needs to sound like Nobuo. He needs to emulate Nobuo because it's a Final Fantasy game. And he said he wrote, like, I don't know how many songs in Nobuo's style, and it was like him trying to emulate, this famous composer. And like, he said he listened to it later and down the road, and he was just like, honestly, like, it's not bad, but it's just like he hated it because it didn't sound as good as Nobuo, because he's not Nobuo. And he's like, if I'm going to write the music and it's going to be good, like, it needs to be in my style, because that's like what I do. So he went back to the drawing board, and he had like the artist just draw up pictures, because they couldn't show them scenes from the game yet. So they're like, okay, just draw me like paintings of like what's going on during these scenes. So that's why you get the Damascus. What is it? What's the big one for Final Fantasy 12 that's always played? The Esther Sand, right?
I suppose so.
I'll put it on the screen here. I feel like an idiot bringing this up and I can't remember, but it's the when you're running outside of Rabanastre and you're in the desert and you're just going after the sunstones and everything like that. That whole thing, he was bringing that up as an example, and he said that they had painted like all these big deserts and all these creatures and like all these village people that live out there and like how tough it was, but how adventurous it was. And like that really, like he just like stared at it for like an hour, he said, and just like stared at it and tried to like think about like, what would it feel like to be here? And then he started writing music, and he did the same thing for Rabanastre, for like the underground area, for a lot of the different environments in that game. And while I can understand people didn't really like the soundtrack from that game in the sense that it's not very singable, there's not a lot of like motifs, like melodies that are signify characters on the screen. The music itself, if you play the game, really like gives you a sense of like what's going on, like, or like at least like it really jives well with the atmosphere. And I think honestly, that's not my top 3, but it kind of annoys me when I see people trashing it. So
I mean, I think it's a great soundtrack. I think it definitely works in the context of the Evil East world itself.
Sure.
And I come from someone who played like tactics beforehand, so it felt like right at home for me.
Yeah.
I can understand it feeling a little off-putting. I mean, 12 in general feels a little off-putting for people who are so used to that style before, but if you just treat the game as it is itself, I mean, it's a fantastic game, despite some like faults I have with it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I still think it goes above and beyond enough that I can proudly call it a Final Fantasy title.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the soundtrack included.
For sure. So we both picked Final Fantasy 9 for our number 1 soundtrack, and then we started talking about Final Fantasy 15, then 14, and then 12. Was one of those your number 2 pick, though?
14, I would like to put 14 in 2, but it really is a crazy beast altogether. Like, mm-hmm. They've got the expansions, like the different themes, and like one time the soundtrack is great, one time it's like, this one doesn't really fit my needs.
Well, it's kind of like when you have so many songs, obviously some of them are going to be just amazing.
Yeah, the nature of an MMO for that. But I think Final Fantasy 6 hits a lot of right notes for me on that. 4 hits a lot of right notes. God, it's so hard to pick. They're all so good. Even like 13 has a phenomenal soundtrack.
Here's what I'll say though, because I was thinking about this, and my gut reaction was, okay, the PS1 era is a gold mine, is like the cream of the crop for the soundtracks. 7, 8, and 9. I just have to figure out how I'm going to rate these, right? And like I was like, okay, how would I rate these? And then I started to figure it out a little bit, but then I started thinking to myself, okay, well, is the PS1 era really the cream of the crop? Because Final Fantasy VI's soundtrack was really good. And now that I'm thinking about it, Final Fantasy X soundtrack, you had Hymn of the Faith, Xanarkand. I really like the Beset Island theme. Like, I mean, it was like, come on, like that was really good too. And then Final Fantasy IV, we have Theme of Love. Like, dude, it's really hard if you want to just do like your top 3. It's quite difficult.
Yeah, I think we're just in agreement that they're all good in their own way. Even 15 has its moments.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I had to rank them though, like honestly, like I would put at least the top 3. I thought about it, 9, and then I'm still sticking with the PS1s. That's because that's where I grew up with. We had 9, 7, and then 8. Those are my top 3 for me. Although I feel disgusting for not putting 6 in there, but I don't know, man. I think I just feel like 7 and 8 are just a smidge above 6, even though 6 is just epic. So,
yeah, Final Fantasy 11 has a great soundtrack also for people who've actually played that. Like, even if you like, I'm kind of hesitant to ever recommending people play that game because it's definitely a product of its time. I mean, I enjoyed it when I played it, but the soundtrack is fantastic to it. You should definitely at least download them and listen to them. I mean, listening to Roland Berry Field's theme or Gustaberg theme it's so relaxing. But in terms of ranking, I don't know. I have a hard time thinking that because there's like individual songs from each I like you said. I mean, 9's definitely my favorite. 14 is definitely up there, but it's really its own beast because it's always growing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I really like 5 also.
Yeah, I like 5. 5 has some good tunes. I can. That's one of the ones I can easily not put in my top 3 though.
Yeah, I mean, I can make a best and worst. Best is 9, worst is 15. I'll end it on that.
Okay, all right. So there's our discussion with the soundtrack. I'm sure we could discuss this more. Just leave some comments in the YouTube channel, or you can tweet at us if you want us to talk some more about that. I know we could probably talk some more about some of the other games, but we are getting far on time here, and we have some other topics. One of which was Kingdom Hearts. So recently there was a interview with Nomura in PlayStation Magazine, and he specified that the development cycle for Kingdom Hearts 3 is in 3 stages, and the first 2 stages are just about complete. And my reaction from that was, I thought the game was coming out this year. I really feel like it is. Are you going to get an entire stage of development done in a year? Or what is that third stage, right? And maybe that third stage is just like post-production, like, hey, we got to go do the marketing. We got to go do interviews. I don't know. But what do you think, Eric?
Now, did he mean like 3 acts of the game or 3 acts of the development?
He said, okay, so he said the 3 acts of Kingdom Hearts, there's 3 acts of Kingdom Hearts 3, and the first 2 are just about complete.
No, it's like story game-wise, or
he didn't specify.
He didn't specify. Okay, well, if he means the game, then likely that just means like all 3 have already been set up and developed, and like they got everything worked out. But you know, if he meant it that way, I think what he means is that they completed like optimization for the first and second one, got like everything, like all the bugs, and got, you know, all the scenes animated and localized and, you know, stuff like that. Then, you know, there maybe just be doing all that for like the third part of the game right now, which is possible what they're doing. Is what he may be referring to that. I have a hard time imagining that they've only finished 2/3, like only finished 2/3 the game for a 2018 release. I think there's a little more context that needs to go with that. Mm-hmm. If not, like if they've like done absolutely nothing but the third part of the game, then it would easily be pushed to 2019. I could definitely see that.
Yeah. But, well, I think when you look at that statement, you can look at it, like you said, in 2 ways. You can either look at it as a gamer, and what we see is not exactly everything that goes into the game, right? So if we look at it and we're like, oh, there's 3 stages of Kingdom Hearts 3. We look at it as the gamer that sits down and plays the game. Like, okay, I press start, and now I'm beginning stage 1. And when I see like the end game credits roll, that's the end of stage 3. Well, there's a lot more that goes into that. And like, I think that perhaps, like you said, they have everything lined up. They have like all the scenes animated. They probably have everything built. It's just, I think there's a lot in like maybe like Act 3 that he meant like I said, marketing, sending out interviews, figuring out the production schedule. Is it all going to come out on the same day, or is it going to come out? Yeah, exactly. Like a lot of things like that. I mean, I'm sure that there's still stuff they're tweaking and still polishing, making sure that like testing it to make sure it's not buggy and stuff like that. And I'm sure they're still finishing up like portions of the end game content. But I would have a hard, like you said, I would have a hard time believing that the game is like barely 60% complete, or, you know, whatever, a 66% complete, however you want to break that up. But
yeah, it might be a mistranslation too. I have a feeling he said that like they're over 2/3 done with the whole entire like development production, and the last third is just like you said, like just a variety of things, not even just the game itself. It's they got to get the localization, the marketing ready. You know, they got to have to do probably trips around the world to promote it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a lot going on top of that.
Yeah, and you think about it, there's a lot of stuff. Like they have to line up interviews with the voice actors. They have to do like behind the scenes. Like they have to work out who like who's going to get early access to the game. Like you always see like on publications will be like a first hour of Kingdom Hearts 3, right? I'm sure we'll start seeing more and more of that stuff coming out a couple of months before the game comes out. So they have to start prepping those and making sure that they find a really good spot for that doesn't have like spoilers in it and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, even for like FF15, they announced the date like through a special event, and it was just a couple months until the game was going to come out in September. Then it got pushed in November, but like even then, they were still taking in feedback, making major or minor adjustments based on feedback and those type of things. So there's a lot to account for. I wouldn't worry too much about it jumping to 2019. It's always possible it can be. This is Square Enix. I won't say it won't get pushed to 2019, but I do feel a little confident they'll make that 2018 date.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just for clarification, I don't really care. Like my thing with games getting delayed is I think it's in general a good thing. The only time it gives me cause for concern is when I feel like it's being delayed because it's mismanaged, right? But when a game's just being delayed because they're like, we want to make it, better, or we think we could just tweak this a little bit more and it would be a more enjoyable experience, I'm all about it. So if they did say, hey, we just need a little bit more time, 2019, early 2019, okay, whatever. That's fine. I would not freak out about it,
Yeah, as long as they're transparent on why it's getting delayed. Like, everyone was questioning the quality of 15 when they said it was being delayed in September, and everyone's like, uh-oh, this isn't going to be a completed game, and like, people are right. It wasn't.
Yeah.
But it's the context of it. Like, we talked about the Shin Megami Tensei 5 delay and stuff like that. And we looked at the context of the situation. It's like, it's not like really there is a problem with management, at least not that we're aware of. It's just that, they need more than they thought, or they need to change things around from their original plan. It's not that it's being mismanaged. It's just that, when you actually get into the heart of things, there may be more to it than you originally planned. I mean, I think this happens in development all the time. It's just how much you want to set back. And I'll tell you this, folks, is that they don't ever want to delay a game when they, even on a higher exec standpoint, none of them actually want to delay the game. Because you know why? Because they have to change all the marketing. And that costs so much money to do.
Yeah.
So when they delay a game, it is truly because they have to, and not because they just simply feel like it. So I would definitely take that into account also with delayed titles. So, like I said before, it's all context of the situation.
Very cool. I mean, that pretty much sums up my thoughts with that. But
speaking of delays and troubles, let's talk about Sea of Thieves. That is an MMORPG from Microsoft and Rare that came out just a few days ago and is having a little bit of trouble, and it's getting pretty hammered by critics right now. Not too hammered, but it is getting hammered. What essentially going on is that people are having a hard time logging into the game, and it's having a bunch of server issues on day one, and it got bad to the point that they actually had to stop sales of the game until they could get things back on track and people can start playing again. Now, people, I'm very sure, will get mad about that, but if anyone's played like an MMO first day before, I played through plenty of day one MMOs, I can tell you this is so common.
Yeah.
like, no matter how much you test it, like, it doesn't, like, really beat out, like, millions of people trying to get into your game at once. And actually, 14 2.0, when A Realm Reborn first came out, it had a lot of issues when it first came out, to the point that they did the same thing. They had to stop sales for just, like, a few days so they could just get the server stabilized. And I remember getting frustrated that, like, certain things were happening, like, you couldn't click on things in the open world. It kept crashing when you try to get into instances, or like not let you in, period. I mean, this first day stuff happens. So I really wouldn't make that out to be how the entire game is. If the developers care about the game, they're going to get it fixed right away. And from what I heard, they did get things back on track for the most part.
Sure.
Sea of Thieves. But I wouldn't make that first impression of it out to be how, like, the rest of the game is. Now, it is getting hammered for another thing, that while it is a very open adventure game, like a kind of create your adventure type of deal with Sea of Thieves, it is lacking a lot of in-depth content, like, even more than, like, a MMO would usually have. Like, MMOs usually kind of start bare bones and they start working their way out to more content. Like, Sea of Thieves has lack of content to the point that you get it done quickly, and then you really don't have anything to do besides that. Well, they were kind of hoping and depending that you would create your own fun with your friends.
Sure.
But that doesn't seem to be the way it's going so far.
Yes, like, from what I've seen, it looks like you can have a lot of fun with it in the first few hours, because, like, for example, I was watching like Dreamcast guy's review of it, right? And he was talking about, well, hey, I was playing this game and I was having a blast because you need like 3 or 4 people to drive this ship, right? If you can collect a team, you can steer like a pirate ship, but the person steering, they can't see the ocean. And so you need somebody that's like a lookout that's telling you no, go left, go right. Right. So you have that whole thing going on, and you have somebody dealing with the sails or whatever. Then you have somebody like looking out for other players that are trying to shoot you down. And then you can, like, recruit other players that you meet, and you can go do missions and like like you said, make your own adventure. But like you said, like, there's not enough content to keep the loop going, because what happens is after you complete a mission, you find treasure chests, you get gold, but there's nothing for you to upgrade. Like, so, like, your base, like, stats when you start the game are the stats you'll have for the entire game. So it's not like, oh, like, I've been playing for a year, my character is stronger. No, you're just as strong as everyone else. So the only thing you can buy is like cosmetic things to make your character look different. And the only one that sees that is other players, like, because it's first person view. So, like, it's really like your only reason to keep playing the game is if you like exploration, or, I could see if you want to get on with some buddies and, like, try to steer a ship and, like, oh, look at that guy, he's in a raft, let's try to shoot him down and take his stuff. And, something like that might be kind of fun. But I don't know. They really need to put some kind of, like, skill tree. I can't believe I'm saying this, but some kind of skill tree or something. Or, like, I don't know, you should be able to buy armor and, like, improve it, or, like, craft items or something, right? Because otherwise it's like, why do I want this gold? Like, do I need
you need to create, in MMOs, you need to create some form of carrot on a stick to become desirable for people. I played 14. Everyone knows I played 14, but I played 14, and the end game goal is, if you're, like, more into the hardcore rating scene like I am, the end game goal is to beat the final savage boss, and then get the loot from it and get yourself best in slot for your character. That is, like, the ultimate goal for it. And there's always something to work up towards in 14. And I think you need something like that in Sea of Thieves. And I need to research more and see exactly how a progression system works exactly in that game. But, like, you really need to motivate. Like, you can have people go about it the way they want to, and, like, creating their own adventure like you want to, but you need to offer a powerful incentive for people to keep going, to keep working with other people, to like get towards a common goal. Like maybe maybe make some like unbelievably big treasure that you have to find, and it's kind of hard to say because the internet will tell you where it is, but you need a carrot on the stick that motivates people to go for it.
Yeah, I can see why they might not want to go the traditional route with just giving players like all this crazy equipment, or like being able to like upgrade a ship into like a like a battleship or something with like steel holes and stuff like that, because part of the experience is running into other players and just getting into combat, and they set it up in a way to where you wouldn't just have thousands of pirate ships. It's like each player is basically on their own map, and they'll stick 2 or 3 other people in this giant map, and then that's it. Like it's not like when you log into Final Fantasy 14 on a server, there's like 2,800 people logged on today on this one server. It's only a few people on this one map, right? So I could see where, like, okay, if Joe Blow has been playing for 9 months every day and he's just got like a battleship, he just goes around cremating everybody on the map, I could see why that would like set the balance out. But like you said, they got to find some way, whether it's letting you build your own fortress or something, or like something that like gives you the carrot to chase. Because otherwise, like every review I've seen, they said they had so much fun with their friends, like playing it and like steering the ship and trying to like shoot cannonballs at other ships, and there's voice chat and like it's like really exciting. But after about 5 hours, they're like, they feel like they've done everything.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think they'll probably take feedback and build on it more over time, but I think you're just kind of getting what you're getting right now, which isn't really a good thing. You should be having something at least in there to keep people motivated and going. I will say, though, it is a pretty looking game. Aesthetically, I like it. It looks like very goofy and adventurous, and that's the kind of stuff that I do like in my games. But, if it doesn't really have the content to keep you going, if they ever offer a free trial one day for it, I may be interested in trying it and just seeing how it is. But I can't do more than one MMO right now.
One thing I did see here's 2 things with that. There's a good and bad side here. Because you say, well, I can't really do another MMO, but this seems more like a casual MMO, right? Because there isn't all that development with your skills and with like the getting new loot and everything like that. It seems like something you could just play on just like 2 or 3 times a month with some like buddies or something like that. So it seems like it would have less of a time commitment, but so that's the good side. But one criticism that I've seen with this is that it'll actually let players play who do not have voice chat. And if it's hands down, they're like, no, like if you cannot, having somebody in your party that does not have voice chat is you might as well not even play with that person, because like you're trying to steer a boat and they can't tell you like go left or go right,
Can they use a text function?
I don't know, but like even that is kind of annoying, right? So,
it's harder to communicate on an instant.
Yeah,
but it, as long as you know what you're doing. But I don't know in the context of that game on how crucial voice is.
Yeah, so I don't know how because I don't know how quick you need to be, and I know. There's a lot of different things going on. They make it seem like it's pretty intense. So I would imagine having somebody that can just say, go left instead of typing go left, or God forbid, if you're trying to like type something with your Xbox controller, you have to individually select the letters. If you haven't upgraded to buying a keyboard,
I'm sure they let you plug in a USB keyboard.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. But
to use it, but there's some people who don't care enough to get it and just still go about their own thing.
But honestly, I kind of want to play Sea of Thieves. Like you said, maybe a free trial. I feel like there's a lot of games that I'm just waiting for developers to update. One of which would be Sea of Thieves, and then Kingdom Come Deliverance. I've been watching that, still waiting on them to update that. And Man, it's the time it's a day and age we live in where we just like they release a game and it's like got issues and they're like, okay, based on player feedback, we're gonna kind of custom design this game for you. So I don't like it, but I'm willing to wait. So we'll see what comes of it.
Let's see what happens after it comes out for a year. I think out of all MMOs I've seen come out right now, I think, between World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14, and Guild Wars 2, which are the big three right now, for the most part.
I know Elder Scrolls Online is coming out with another expansion soon too. So I don't know if people are actually playing that, but
not really.
Okay, well, we'll move on from that.
The poll wise, it's not that
low.
big. It's big enough to sustain the community and make profit off of it.
Yeah,
but it's it's definitely not the desired amount that Bethesda wanted.
But anyways, moving on here, we do have our next topic. John Stein, one of our recent listeners, thanks for subscribing. Really appreciate it. But he was messaging me. He said, hey, you guys should talk about the Diablo series if you can. And then he also wanted to bring up a game briefly he wanted me to mention. So I'll do that at the end of this conversation. But he wanted us to talk about the Diablo series. Now, I've only played the second one, and then I played the third one. And by and large, my feelings with the Diablo series is they have some of the best like loot or loop systems in play. Like, hey, like I want to go to explore this other part of the dungeon. I need to get some more money so I can go buy this new equipment. Right? That's always what's driving me with these games. Is just I just need to play just a little bit longer just to get this new piece of equipment or upgrade this new ability. And it's just really well paced for me. And in addition to that, they're just a really fun set of games, especially with Diablo 3 to play with other people. Like I remember Diablo 3 when it came out, my cousin and me just sat on a couch one day and we just over a weekend and we just played together like through like the entire thing. And that's a very good memory I have of playing that game. So kudos for that. But I know some people are like really hardcore into it. They gotten like all the, the expansions and such, and, they can talk at length about like the story and all the lore and everything like that. I don't really know too much about that. I've pretty much just looked at it as like a dungeon crawler and just approached it as that. But what are your thoughts on that, Eric?
I first played Diablo on the PlayStation way back then. It wasn't even mine. I played it with a friend, like at his house, and I played a little bit of that. And I thought it was enjoyable for what it was, definitely. The first time I really got into Diablo was the second one in the earlier 2000s. I played with friends who got really into it. So I got it myself, and I played like a druid mostly. I got like the level 80 or something like that, if I remember correctly. And then, eventually it was kind of like a phase, and we all stopped and played and went on to the next thing. But, I mean, we had really fun. It reminded me a lot of, like, Fantasy Star Online, which I did play first. It's like you go in the dungeon, you kill stuff, you get the loot, you make yourself better. You think to yourself this would get boring, but for some reason you keep going in and doing it. And that really, like, drew me in, especially at my age at the time. But I played the third game day one. I was excited for that. I did play that day one, and I did get through the story, and I got through, like, normal, hard, and very hard versions of it. But for some reason, I did not feel very motivated to get all the loot and get myself upgraded.
Yeah.
I felt like I got the most I could out of this game for my own personal interest. So I kind of stopped playing and went to other stuff. Like, friends of mine played Diablo 3 also, and they kind of went on to the next thing also. They were kind of the same mindset as me. I think they're great games, and if you're someone who's into a lot of loot progression systems purely, or like dungeon crawling in general, I think Diablo is definitely one of the top dogs when it comes to that type of concept. And I encourage anyone who likes those type of games to try them. I mean, they're all three of them are great. One is a little one is definitely outdated. Two definitely.
It's starting to look pretty dated. I was just looking back on it before doing this conversation, and it's looking pretty dated, but it's still fun to play.
Yeah. 3 is definitely the definitive game you would want to play, and that's where the most people are. But if you feel a little nostalgic, 2 definitely has its moments also.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm always looking for, like, if you have people over or whatever, and you can play, if you want to play games together, right? There's all sorts of different genres of games you can play. You can play fighter games, you can racing games. There's a lot of 2-player like first person shooter games, and just like all sorts of games to play with other people. But like if you literally have someone in your living room and you both just want to play like an action RPG, I mean, it doesn't get much better than just like plugging in another controller and just sitting down and playing a Diablo game. I mean, it's just fun, So
yeah, those games are a lot more fun if you have friends to play with.
Yeah. So I mean, that for that reason alone, I think it's really well executed. But he did want me to bring up that David Brevik, he is the creator of the Diablo series and the co-founder of Blizzard. So he is independently writing and programming and drawing and making the music for this game. It's called It Lurks Below. It's on Steam right now, but it's not out yet. However, if you just look up It Lurks Below on YouTube, you'll see David Brevik regularly live streams the game. And it's basically a survival side-scrolling RPG. It's when you first look at it, you're like, "Oh, this is like Mario," because you're like, it's a side-scroller. But like, no, it's not like you just go to the right. You can go to the left or right, and like you can dig down, and there's dungeons you go through, and you have to upgrade your equipment and like your skill set, and there's potions and like different monsters for you to kill. And it's pretty crazy that he's been programming it himself. He plans on selling it on Steam. I know there's a closed beta right now of 200 people testing it. I don't think you can still sign up for that.
Is it like a Metroidvania type game?
Yes, I would say it's probably a very good analogy. But anyways, so I haven't played it, but I've watched about an hour of him live streaming it. And it's honestly, it's pretty cool because this guy's a veteran, and just seeing his take on all these systems, and like just the idea that this guy is like, yeah, whatever. I could have like a whole team of people working on a game, but then you have all these different opinions. He's like, I just want to write a game myself again. So he literally coded it from scratch. He said, hey, like I was going to use a lot of these newer engines that are out today, but I started to use them and they just pissed me off because even though it's really easy to do all these things, like it's really hard to like customize things because they've made it so easy to, put graphics in or whatever. So it's really cool. It's if you guys want to check it out, It Lurks Below. Just type it in Google or do a Google search and see if it meets your fancy. It's definitely recommend checking it out. I plan on buying it. So
yeah, I'll definitely check it out. That's the concept that got my interest, definitely.
Very cool. Mm-hmm. So we also have another comment from Leon. Last week we were asking him how old he was because he said his first system was the Atari. So I'm just going to read his comment here because it's pretty entertaining. So he's ha ha ha. Now you made me feel old. I can tell you that my first console was the Atari 2600, and then he saw a great release. And I saw as a great release, and the most wonderful thing when Wolfenstein 3D came out, and 5 1/4 discs black and white version to be played in MS-DOS. I played a couple of games in MS-DOS. But he says, he's 37-ish, but a gamer all around. But he said he went from Atari to let's see here, Atari to I believe
Commodore?
The Commodore, and then the NIS or the regular Nintendo, as you say. He skipped the Sega. He had the Game Boy, and then I know you said he jumped to the PlayStation later. But man, I don't think I've even played any like original Atari games at all. I don't think I could say that. So.
I mean, I've only played a few myself. That's definitely before my time.
Yeah.
Generation. And, I mean, I've obviously... I tried E.T. for Atari, the notoriously... or decide amongst people is the worst game ever made. And I can kind of see why, because you essentially have to start the whole game over once you fall down to a pit. That thing's unbearable to play. Like, even like on Atari standards, it's
it's pretty bad. Leon, I have a question for you. If you're watching this, okay, so your first system was the Atari 2600. There's been a lot of news lately about Atari coming out with a new game console. Does this interest you at all? Let us know. I'm interested because the news surrounding this Atari box is that basically one of the big features of the Atari box is going to be that they're going to have a lot of their big IPs on the Atari box. And I'm just like looking at that, like, I feel like this console should have came out like 25 years ago. Like, I mean, who's really looking forward to Breakout or whatever, or Pong or whatever, you know?
So just like the NES or SNES Classic, just the Atari version.
Well, that's what I thought at first, but then they're talking about they're gonna have an like they said, it's also going to be like an indie machine. So like they want, like, they're trying to get developers to come over, and like it's supposed to be competitive with like current modern day consoles. So I'm just very baffled. They haven't released very much information about it, so I don't know.
Well, you got the Switch, you got the Xbox, and you have the PlayStation, and you have Steam. All these 4 options to play indie games, and all I can say to them is good luck.
Yeah,
Ouya thought they could make an indie machine also, and yeah, look what happened to them. I don't think the Atari name alone will help get those sales going. Most people don't, most of this generation today don't even really know what Atari is. Like, you may be able to pique the interest of people who lived during that time. Yeah. I think you might be able to, pique the interest of a niche audience, but I don't think you're getting anyone quite new to Atari into that.
Yeah, that's, I don't know. They're very, very serious about it. They have a prototype. They almost released it recently, but they realized they had some issues and they went back to the drawing board, and they said they're going to make it, they want to make it even higher quality. But I don't know. They're saying weird things like, they're going to put re-releases of all their big IPs like Pong on there. And then like, I think Centipede was one they said they brought up. I'm like, I'm not going to, like, how expensive is this thing going to be? I'm not going to go buy an Atari box that's $300 to play Pong. Even
you
if
can buy some cheap Chinese knockoff box that has all those games on it, and those cost like $15, $20.
And then they're like, "Oh, we still have a very good relationship with Activision." And I'm like, "Well, I don't have a very good relationship with Activision, so."
Like, can you put Call of Duty on that box?
Yeah, I don't know. So like, they're really gonna. I think they kind of saw the light. Like, oh man, like the money here for this to be successful is in the games. So I think that's where they made this shift towards. Well, we're appealing to indie gamers. So I don't know. We'll have to see. What the biggest thing with me is a price point. If it ended up being something like the SNES Classic and it was like $20, I don't know. I might pick it up just to check it out, but
it's got to be cheap to make some form of appeal. I highly doubt that thing's going to be successcul.
Yeah, it's got like and they don't even use the original Atari controller. They switched to like an Xbox looking controller. I don't know, but I'm interested in it. So Leon, let me know if you are interested in the Atari box. If you're not sure about it, just Google it. They've been doing a lot of press releases with it and everything recently. So let us know. But other than that, this concludes our show today. If you are still watching, we'd really appreciate you to subscribe. And also, there is a Twitter link in the description. Go there, follow us. That way you can get updated with anything that we release. We'll probably start putting our updates on how far we are in games or anything crazy like that on there as well. So if you want to follow us, it's Twitter at Phoenix Edge RPG. So that's our handle for that. And again, if you are listening to this in the audio version, we do have a YouTube side of things. So just type Phoenix Edge into the search bar, or I'll put a link in the description. You can click on that and you can subscribe there as well and check us out. But other than that, we will talk to you all next week. Thank you guys.
Take care.